welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. The first emergency alert came at exactly 11:47 p.m. I was on my couch, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, when the blaring tone made me jump. The screen lit up with an urgent red banner. Emergency alert, severe threat. Do not open your door for any reason after dark. I stared at it, blinking. No context, no explanation. Just, don't open your door. Well, that's creepy, I muttered, locking my phone and tossing it onto the coffee table. Probably some kind of test or maybe a hack. I'd seen weird alerts before. One time, the state emergency system accidentally sent out a warning about a missile strike that didn't exist. Still, something about it made my skin crawl. I tried to push it from my mind and went back to my phone, but my brain kept circling back to the message. The wording of it: not stay inside, not lock your doors, do not open your door for any reason. It felt personal. Then my phone vibrated again. Another alert. Emergency alert. Missing persons reported. Avoid answering your door. Missing persons. I sat up straighter, the hairs on my arms rising. This one had more weight. If people were actually disappearing, then I opened Facebook. The local town page was blowing up. Did anyone else get that alert? What's going on? My neighbor's doorbell rang at midnight. He went to check and now he's gone. Do not open your doors. Just got a call from my cousin. Police are looking into multiple disappearances. I clicked on a post from someone named Marie Holloway. The name was familiar. She lived a few houses down. Her post was frantic. My dad's missing. His doorbell rang, and I heard him go answer it. When I got up this morning, the front door was wide open and he was gone. No signs of forced entry, nothing missing, just gone. Please, if anyone saw anything, let me know. Chills crept up my spine. Mr. Holloway. I saw him just the other day watering his lawn. Now he was gone. I minimized Facebook and checked my door. Locked. Deadbolt secured. No signs that anyone had been near it. Just my quiet front porch, empty streetlights, and a still night. Nothing unusual. I shook my head. This was ridiculous. People went missing all the time. This was probably some kind of break-in issue or a local crime wave, and the emergency system was just being dramatic. And yet, I opened my phone again and scrolled back through my call history. Last night, at 2:13 a.m., I had a missed call from an unknown number. A second later, I found something worse. I had a notification from my doorbell camera. Motion detected. Timestamp, 2:13 a.m. My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard anything. Had someone been at my door? I hesitated, then clicked on the footage. The video loaded, grainy in the darkness. For a second, there was nothing. The porch was empty, just dim light filtering over the welcome mat. Then, without warning, the doorbell rang, loud, sharp. My blood ran cold. In the video, the camera caught movement. A shifting shadow. A shape standing just out of view. I felt a lump form in my throat. My house was on a quiet street. Who the hell would be ringing my doorbell at 2 in the morning? The figure never stepped into the light. Never moved. But the video played on, the doorbell ringing again. Slower this time. Ding dong. Ding dong. The sound was warped, stretched, as if someone was pressing the button, then hesitating before letting go. Then, all at once, the ringing stopped. The video cut out. No one ever stepped into view. No one ever left. A shudder crawled through my body. I closed the footage, my heart hammering. That alert, do not open your door for any reason. It suddenly felt a lot more real. I needed to tell someone. I pulled up my friend Charlie's number and hit dial. He answered on the first ring. Dude, he said, voice tight. You got the alerts, right? Yeah, I said, swallowing. And I checked my camera. My doorbell rang last night at exactly 2:13 a.m. Silence. Then, shit, what? I pressed. He hesitated. Then, in a whisper, mine did too. My skin crawled. Charlie took a shaky breath. He broke off. I was an idiot. I opened the door. Cold fear washed over me. Charlie, what did you see? Silence. Then, just before the line went dead, he whispered, nothing. I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at the blank screen. Nothing? The word sent a strange, sick feeling through my stomach. I checked Facebook again, scrolling rapidly through the posts. More people were reporting doorbells ringing at odd hours. More people were talking about missing neighbors. And then a new emergency alert. Emergency alert. Do not trust the doorbell. I gripped my phone tightly, my breath shallow. What the hell was happening? A dog barked somewhere outside, sharp and sudden. A porch light flickered down the street. Then, just as I was about to put my phone down, my doorbell rang. I froze. It was exactly 2:13 a.m. Ding dong. I clamped a hand over my mouth, my pulse pounding. The air in my house felt suddenly heavy, thick, like the walls were closing in. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The doorbell rang again. Ding, dong, slow, wrong. I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping my phone like a lifeline. Another emergency alert buzzed against my palm, but I couldn't bring myself to look at it. Something shifted on the other side of the door. A shadow through the peephole. A whisper, so soft I almost didn't hear it. My own voice. Let me in. I nearly dropped the phone. My blood turned to ice. That wasn't possible. The shadow outside moved, pressing up against the door. The doorknob rattled. My phone vibrated one last time. I forced myself to look down. Emergency alert. Don't look at them. My breath hitched. A slow, scraping sound echoed from the other side of the door. Then silence. My hands were shaking. I barely registered the sound of my own breath, ragged and uneven. I stayed frozen like that for hours, locked in place, staring at my front door. The sun rose. The doorbell never rang again, but I knew it would be back. I didn't sleep. The sun was already creeping over the rooftops when I finally peeled myself off the couch, my muscles aching from staying in one position for so long. My head pounded and my throat was dry. I had spent the entire night frozen, waiting for the doorbell to ring again, but it never did. I swallowed hard, staring at my front door. My skin crawled just looking at it. Something had been out there. Something had spoken in my voice. The emergency alert still burned in my mind. Don't look at them. I had obeyed, but I needed answers. I grabbed my phone and immediately called Charlie. No answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. He had said his doorbell rang too. He had said he opened the door. I pulled up our last texts. The last message from him was at 2:10 a.m., minutes before my own doorbell rang. Charlie, I don't feel right, man. Charlie, something's outside again. That was it. I swallowed, then hesitated before pulling up the town Facebook page again. My hands felt clammy as I scrolled. More people were missing. Not just Mr. Holloway, not just Charlie, entire families. One of the top posts caught my attention. My sister's gone. She answered the door last night. This morning, her house was empty, like no one had ever lived there. No furniture, no clothes, nothing. I don't understand. Someone please. What's happening? I exhaled slowly, my mind racing. This was beyond anything I could rationalize. People weren't just disappearing, they were being erased. The neighborhood was eerily quiet. I peered out my front window, and my stomach lurched. Several houses that had been occupied yesterday looked wrong. Driveways empty, blinds shut, lawns perfectly undisturbed, like no one had ever lived there. I backed away from the window, gripping my phone like a lifeline. I needed more information. The police, the news, someone had to be talking about this. I pulled up Google and typed, "Emergency alerts, don't trust the doorbell." No results. I tried again. Still nothing. A chill crawled up my spine. How was that possible? This wasn't just happening to me. People across town were talking about it. I switched to the local news website. 404 error. I tried another one. This page does not exist. A deep, gnawing fear settled in my gut. It was like the information was being wiped. Like whatever was happening here was being covered up. I needed to get out of the house. I grabbed my jacket and shoved my phone in my pocket, checking the peephole one last time. Empty street. The air outside felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. I stepped onto my porch, squinting at the quiet houses around me. The neighborhood felt abandoned. I knocked on my neighbor's door. No answer. I checked another house. Same thing. Then I reached Charlie's house. His car was still parked outside. But when I knocked, the door creaked open slightly, unlocked. A cold dread settled over me. I pushed the door open slowly. Charlie's house was empty. No furniture, no pictures on the walls, no dishes in the sink, just bare floors and blank white walls. I turned in slow circles, my chest tightening. Charlie had lived here for years. I had spent entire weekends in this house, playing video games, ordering pizza. Now it was like he had never existed. I backed out of the house, my breath coming in quick, uneven gasps. A new emergency alert buzzed in my pocket. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. Emergency alert. Don't trust your neighbors. I stared at the words, my blood running cold. That didn't make sense. There were barely any neighbors left. Then, from across the street, I saw movement. A figure standing on a porch, watching me. A woman. Her face looked familiar. Maybe Mrs. Lowry from 2 houses down. But something about her was off. She tilted her head, her gaze locked onto mine. I took a step back. She stepped forward. My heart slammed against my ribs. She was too still. Her body didn't shift naturally. Her arms didn't sway. Her chest didn't rise and fall with breath. It was like she was waiting. And then, without warning, she smiled. A wide, unnatural grin. Too many teeth. My stomach turned. I took another step back, and she moved at the same time, mirroring me. I turned and ran. I sprinted back to my house, heart pounding. As I reached the porch, I risked one last glance over my shoulder. She was still standing there, still smiling, and then she lifted her hand, pressed a single finger to her lips. Shoo! I slammed the door shut behind me, locking it, bolting it, backing away until my legs hit the couch and I collapsed onto it. My lungs burned. My mind raced. Charlie was gone. His house was empty. And now my neighbors, the ones who were still here, weren't normal anymore. I pulled up my phone again. The emergency alert was still on the screen. Don't trust your neighbors. I shuddered, gripping the device tightly. Another alert buzzed in. Emergency alert. Stay inside. Don't look out your windows. My breath hitched. I stood, heart hammering, and took one slow step toward the window. The blinds were partially open. For a split second, I saw something move outside, a shadow where there shouldn't be one. And then, ding dong, I stopped breathing. The doorbell rang again, slow, warped, ding, dong. I clenched my jaw, squeezing my eyes shut. No, not this time. I forced myself to back away, keeping my eyes on the floor. A whisper floated through the door, soft, familiar, my own voice. Let me in. I gritted my teeth, fists clenched so tight my nails bit into my palms. Another whisper joined the first. This time it was Charlie's voice. It's okay. You're safe now. I shook my head violently, pressing my hands over my ears. No, the whispers turned into something worse. A scratching sound against the door. A slow, deliberate pressure against the wood, like something was pushing its face against it. I squeezed my eyes shut and dropped to the floor. The doorbell rang one last time. Ding, dong, then silence. I stayed curled up on the floor, heart hammering, breath shaky. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I dared to look at my phone again. One last emergency alert had come in. Emergency alert. They are inside. Silence. That was the worst part. Not the whispers, not the doorbell, not even the way Charlie's voice had called to me from the other side of the door. The silence was what made my skin crawl, because it meant that whatever had been out there was now inside. I stayed perfectly still, barely breathing. My phone was still in my hand, the last emergency alert burning on the screen. They are inside. I forced myself to think. Stay calm. Stay rational. I had locked the doors, the windows. There was no way someone had gotten in. No way I hadn't heard them break a window or force the lock. And yet, the house felt different, like I wasn't alone anymore. My pulse pounded in my ears as I slowly sat up. My eyes flickered around the room, searching for anything out of place. The front door was still locked. The blinds were drawn. Nothing had changed, except for one thing. The hallway light was on. I hadn't turned it on. A chill crept down my spine. I stared at the light, heart hammering. It was a small thing, a tiny detail, but my gut told me everything I needed to know. Something was in here. I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy book from the coffee table, and held it in front of me like a weapon. Stupid? Probably. But I wasn't about to sit here defenseless. I rose to my feet as quietly as I could, creeping toward the hallway. The floorboards didn't creak. That was wrong. I had lived in this house for 5 years. I knew which spots made noise. That first step into the hallway, it always creaked, but now nothing. I swallowed hard, gripping the book tighter. The hallway stretched ahead of me, leading to the bedrooms. The light flickered softly, casting long, uneven shadows. Then I heard it, a breath, soft, slow, coming from the bathroom. I stopped cold. The door was slightly ajar, the darkness inside pressing against the light. I could see the mirror from here. Something moved, something wrong. My breath hitched as I saw it. A shape. It was standing just out of view, half hidden in the reflection. Not moving, not breathing, watching. I forced myself to step back. My legs felt numb, my chest tight. No, I wasn't going in there. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked quickly, too quickly, back toward the living room. The silence followed me. Then, just as I reached the couch, the bathroom door creaked open. A single step, not mine. Something was walking toward me. I spun around. Nothing. The hallway was empty, but I could still feel it. Watching, waiting. A buzzing noise filled my ears, sharp and disorienting. Took me a second to realize my phone was vibrating. I glanced down. Another emergency alert. My stomach turned as I read the words. Don't run. They notice movement. I froze. The house was too quiet. I could feel something standing just behind me, inches away. I didn't turn around, didn't move. I gripped my phone tighter, my pulse hammering so loudly I swore whatever was behind me could hear it. And then another alert. Don't speak. They mimic sound. A slow, crawling terror spread through my chest. I had already spoken. I had muttered to myself when the first emergency alert came through. I had called Charlie, and now something was inside my house. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. A shadow stretched across the floor in front of me. Not mine. It was taller, thinner, wrong. It moved when I didn't. I squeezed my eyes shut, barely daring to breathe. Don't run. Don't speak. Don't move. I needed a plan. The door was too far. The windows? No. They were locked, and breaking them would make noise. The basement. There was a latch in the kitchen, leading to the old storm cellar. If I could get there, I could hide. I forced myself to inhale slowly. The air felt thick, heavy, like it was pressing against me. Then, carefully, I shifted my foot an inch toward the kitchen. The shadow behind me twitched. I stopped breathing. Seconds passed. Then the shadow moved again, but not toward me. It drifted, sliding along the floor, slow and deliberate, toward the hallway, like it had lost interest, or like it was waiting. I swallowed hard. My legs were stiff, my hands clammy. I forced myself to take another step, then another. The shadow didn't react. I moved slowly, inch by inch, until I reached the kitchen doorway. The cellar latch was just a few feet away. I reached for it, hand shaking, creak. I froze. The shadow stopped, then snapped back toward me. Fast. Too fast. My breath hitched. Then, for the first time, I heard it. A voice. Soft. Familiar. Where are you going? I almost screamed. It sounded exactly like me. I wrenched the cellar door open and threw myself inside, slamming it shut behind me. Darkness swallowed me whole. My heart pounded as I pressed myself against the cold, damp wall. Above me, the kitchen was silent. Then a single knock, soft, rhythmic, then another, and another, slow, deliberate. I clamped a hand over my mouth, squeezing my eyes shut. Then a whisper, "Let me in." I pressed myself deeper into the shadows. The knocking stopped, a long, drawn-out silence. Then a single ring, ding-dong. I shuddered, gripping my arms tightly. I didn't open my eyes, didn't move, didn't breathe, and slowly, the house above me grew quiet again. The emergency alert was right. They were inside, and now I was trapped with them. The air in the basement was thick and stale, pressing in around me like a weight. I could barely see in the darkness, but I wasn't about to turn on my phone's flashlight. If they were still upstairs, I didn't want to give them any reason to look down here. I tried to steady my breathing, forcing myself to take slow, quiet inhales. My heart was hammering so hard in my chest I swore it was shaking the floor. The emergency alerts had been right so far. Don't run. Don't speak. Don't move. I had broken at least one of those rules. Now I was trapped. My hands slid along the rough, stone wall as I took a cautious step forward. The basement wasn't large, just a storage space, cluttered with old boxes and forgotten junk. But I wasn't alone down here. I knew it before I even heard the whisper. "Why did you run?" My stomach twisted into a knot. The voice was mine. It came from the far end of the basement, curling out of the darkness like a hand reaching for me. I clenched my teeth, forcing myself to stay silent. "Come on," my own voice coaxed. "You can't hide forever." I pressed myself against the cold stone wall, trying to steady my shaking hands. Then I heard footsteps, soft, "Bora," moving toward me. I had two choices: stay here and wait for whatever was mimicking me to find me, or run. And I knew what the alerts had said about running, but staying here felt worse. Slowly, carefully, I began inching backward. My foot brushed against something, a wooden crate, and I reached out, feeling the rough edges beneath my fingers. The footsteps stopped. My breath caught in my throat. Silence. Then a whisper right next to my ear. "I see you." I bolted. My body acted before my brain could stop it, shoving off the crate and sprinting toward the stairs. My fingers fumbled for the railing, my legs shaking as I took the steps two at a time. Behind me, I heard something move, something fast. The whisper turned into a laugh. Not mine. Something else. Something wrong. I slammed into the cellar door and yanked on the handle. Locked. No. I yanked harder, panic setting in as the footsteps raced up the stairs behind me. The laughing got louder. Something brushed against the back of my neck. I threw my weight into the door, and suddenly it burst open. I hit the kitchen floor hard, gasping as I scrambled to my feet. My head spun, my vision tilting, and then the cellar door slammed shut behind me. The laughter stopped. Silence. I staggered back, staring at the door. It was closed, but I hadn't shut it. Something down there had. I backed away, heart still racing, and grabbed my phone with shaking fingers. The emergency alerts were gone. Every single one, like they had never been there. I swallowed hard. No, I wasn't crazy. I had seen them. I had read them. Something was erasing them. I flipped to my text messages. Charlie's messages were gone, too. His name wasn't even in my contacts anymore, like he had never existed. A cold, sinking feeling settled in my chest. This wasn't just about my house. It was about everything. Something was making people disappear, and no one was noticing. I needed to get out of here. I turned toward the front door, and then, ding dong, I froze. The doorbell rang again. Slow, warped, ding, dong. I took a step back, my stomach twisting into knots. I knew better, but my eyes flickered to the peephole. Just a quick glance, a mistake, because for the briefest second, I saw my own face staring back at me, smiling, and then the power went out. The house plunged into total darkness. Not the kind of darkness where your eyes adjust after a few seconds, where distant streetlights cast faint glows through the blinds. No, this was absolute darkness. A thick, smothering void that swallowed everything. I couldn't see my hands in front of me. Couldn't see the walls, the furniture, nothing. I gripped my phone tighter, my fingers slick with sweat. I tapped the screen, desperate for even a sliver of light. Nothing. The battery had been at 60% just a minute ago. Now it was dead. They did this. I swallowed hard, my breath shaky. The last thing I had seen before the power cut out. My own face, grinning at me through the peephole. I wasn't alone in this house. The darkness was breathing. I didn't hear it. I felt it. A slow, deliberate inhale, a pause, then a long, rattling exhale. Right behind me, I forced myself to stay still, my muscles locking up. I wasn't going to run. Not this time. I strained my ears, trying to figure out where it was. The breathing was slow, calculated, but it wasn't moving. Neither was I. It was waiting for me to make a mistake, a test. If I moved, if I even twitched, it would know exactly where I was. The air was thick with something unnatural, the kind of quiet that pressed against your skull. Felt alive. My pulse pounded in my ears, every muscle in my body screaming at me to run. Then a whisper, soft, gentle, right next to my ear. "I know you're here." My breath hitched. It had my voice. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself not to react. If I moved, it would know. If I spoke, it would mimic me again. I just had to wait, but my body had other plans. A single bead of sweat slipped down my temple, tickling my skin. I swallowed, my throat dry as sandpaper, and in that moment, something moved. Not in front of me, not beside me, but above me. I didn't hear it. I felt it. The air shifted, the weight of something impossibly large pressing down. Like something was clinging to the ceiling, watching me, waiting. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I didn't, because I knew the second I did, it would drop down on top of me. I forced myself to breathe through my nose, slow and steady. The breathing above me shifted. Something cracked. A joint popping? A limb bending the wrong way? I didn't know. I didn't want to know. My foot twitched, barely a centimeter. But in the silence, it might as well have been a gunshot. The breathing stopped. A long, agonizing pause. Then a thud. Something massive dropped from the ceiling. Right behind me. I didn't think. I ran. Blind. Completely blind. I had no idea where I was going. Furniture slammed into my shins. A sharp corner clipped my shoulder. I didn't stop, didn't slow down. Behind me, something scrambled across the floor, faster than me. The sound wasn't right. Too many limbs, too many joints bending in directions they shouldn't. I lunged for the wall, my hands fumbling blindly. I found a doorknob. The bathroom. I threw myself inside and slammed the door shut behind me. The lock clicked into place. Silence. I pressed my back against the door, my chest heaving. The bathroom was small, cramped. The only light source was the faint glow of the street lamps filtering in through the frosted window. I sucked in a shaky breath, trying to gather my thoughts. Then I made the mistake of looking up. The mirror. My reflection was standing wrong. I was frozen in place, pressed against the door, but the other me, it had its head tilted, just slightly, like it was listening. I barely held back a gasp. My reflection's lips twitched upward into a slow, unnatural grin. Then it blinked. I didn't. A cold wave of dread crashed over me. That thing in the mirror, it wasn't me. I forced myself to move slowly. Deliberately, I shifted my foot an inch to the left. The reflection didn't. It just watched me, that smile widening. My stomach twisted into knots. No. I reached for the doorknob. The second my fingers brushed against it, the reflection's smile vanished. Then it moved. Its head snapped to the side at an impossible angle, the bones in its neck crunching. And then, in my voice, "Let me out." I bolted. I wrenched the door open and stumbled back into the pitch-black hallway, slamming the bathroom door shut behind me. The darkness swallowed me again. I wasn't safe here. I wasn't safe anywhere. Then, a familiar sound. Ding-dong. The doorbell. Long warped. Ding-dong. A slow chill crept down my spine. I turned toward the front door. There was a shape standing outside. The frosted glass made it hard to see, but I didn't need to. I already knew what it was. The silhouette of me stood motionless beyond the door, waiting, smiling. The emergency alert was right. Don't trust the doorbell. But it was too late. It had already found me. The shape outside the door didn't move. Neither did I. We stood there, separated only by a few inches of wood and frosted glass. Me and it. My own silhouette watching, waiting. I felt my pulse in my throat, pounding so hard it was making me dizzy. Then tap, 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 knocking, slow, deliberate, a warning or an invitation. I bit down on my tongue to keep from gasping. It wasn't supposed to knock. The alerts had said nothing about knocking, just the doorbell. So why was it knocking now? I forced myself to take a shaky step backward, my bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. The shape on the other side of the door didn't react. It didn't press against the glass, didn't whisper, didn't try the handle. It just stood there, waiting. It wasn't leaving, and I knew deep in my gut it never would, not unless I did something first. I turned my head ever so slightly, scanning the darkened hallway for options. My body screamed for me to run, to put as much distance between me and that thing as possible. But I knew better now. Running was exactly what it wanted. The emergency alerts had been clear. Don't move. But there was one problem. The alerts were gone, erased, like they had never been there at all. What if the rules had changed? What if it had been watching me this whole time? Learning, adapting, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I took another slow, silent step backward, then another. The knocking stopped. I froze. A long, agonizing pause stretched between us. Then, ding-dong, the doorbell, a low, warped chime that rippled through the house like a death knell. And this time, it wasn't alone. From somewhere upstairs, a second doorbell rang. No, I sucked in a breath, my stomach twisting into a tight knot. I didn't have a second doorbell. I didn't have a second door. And yet, ding-dong, the third, coming from the basement. Impossible. I clenched my hands into fists, trying to steady my shaking breath. Then, knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, rhythmic taps, from the front door, from upstairs, from the basement, all at once. My entire body locked up. I was surrounded. A sick, suffocating silence fell over the house. Then, the front door handle twisted. My stomach dropped. It had never tried to open the door before, not once. But now, it was pushing, testing. I took another shaky step back, and then I felt it, a breath. Behind me, I whipped around. Nothing, just darkness, thick, absolute. But I wasn't fooled. I knew what was lurking in it. I could feel it, watching, grinning, waiting for me to make the wrong move. I had to think. Fast. The doors. There were 3 now. That meant there were 3 of them. And they weren't just mimicking me anymore. They were getting bolder, smarter. I needed to get out of this house. But every exit was blocked, and something told me, if I made a run for it now, if I opened the door, I wouldn't be leaving alone. I sucked in a slow, shaky breath. There was only one thing left to do, break the pattern. If they were copying me, waiting for me to react, what if I did something they didn't expect? My fingers tightened into a fist, and then I did the one thing they weren't waiting for. I lunged for the light switch. My hand slammed against the wall. A click. And then, blinding white light flooded the hallway. A screech tore through the house, high-pitched, ear-splitting, like something dying. The front door shook violently, rattling on its hinges. The knocking exploded into frantic, erratic pounding. All 3 doors, the basement, upstairs, the front, pounding, 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 frenzied, desperate. I pressed my back against the wall, my chest heaving, my entire body trembling. And then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. Silence, thick, suffocating. I forced myself to move, my legs shaky beneath me. The front door was still shut. The handle was still. The basement was silent. The upstairs hall was empty. Slowly, I turned back toward the bathroom. The mirror. I knew what I had to do. With careful, measured steps, I walked forward. Into the bathroom. I flicked on the light. The reflection was there, waiting. Still smiling. I took a slow breath, bracing myself. Then I raised my hand. The reflection didn't. For the first time, it didn't copy me. My stomach twisted. I knew what that meant. This wasn't a reflection anymore. It was something else. And it was still watching me, waiting. But for what? I wasn't going to stick around to find out. I turned back to the hallway, my mind racing. The doors had stopped. But for how long? I needed a new plan, and fast. Then, my phone buzzed. A new emergency alert. Do not leave your house. Do not engage with them. Do not let them in. I swallowed hard. I wasn't alone anymore. not just in my house, but everywhere. And they weren't done yet, not even close. The emergency alert burned on my phone screen, the words stabbing into my brain. Do not leave your house. Do not engage with them. Do not let them in. I gripped the device with white-knuckled fingers, my breath ragged. They had changed the rules. I wasn't safe inside, and I wasn't safe outside. I was trapped. A low creak echoed through the house. The floorboards behind me. My skin went cold. It wasn't over. I turned, slow and careful, my heart pounding. The hallway stretched in both directions, bathed in dim, flickering light. Nothing moved, but something was there. I could feel it, that suffocating, skin-crawling presence. Watching, I had to be smarter. I had to think ahead. I squeezed my phone, forcing my brain into action. The doors had stopped rattling, but that didn't mean they were gone. They were still out there, waiting, and something was inside now. A thought lodged itself in my mind, sharp and relentless. I had been so focused on keeping them out that I never thought about the ones already in. My stomach twisted. I needed to find a way to prove I was still alone, if I even was. A mirror. It had worked before, hadn't it? The thing in the bathroom mirror had stopped copying me. Maybe I could use it again. I turned slowly, stepping toward the nearest reflective surface. The living room. The TV was off. A big, black screen. A perfect, distorted reflection of the room. I moved closer, every step deliberate, my pulse thudding in my ears. I stopped just short of the screen, staring. My reflection stared back. I lifted my hand. It lifted too. Good. It was still me. Then something shifted in the background. Behind me, a shadow. It wasn't mine. A dark, slouched shape, unmoving, watching. I swallowed the scream rising in my throat. Slowly, ever so slowly, I turned my head. Nothing was there, but I had seen it. It had been standing behind me. The air felt wrong, heavy, charged, like the moment before a storm. And then, ding-dong, the doorbell. No, I backed away from the TV, my hands trembling. The front door. But before I could react, ding-dong, ding-dong, ding-dong. The upstairs, the basement, the kitchen, 3 places at once. The house shook with the sound, pounding, knocking. The walls vibrated with it, the very structure of my home groaning under the pressure. They were inside. They had always been inside, and they weren't hiding anymore. The lights flickered violently, plunging the house into erratic flashes of darkness. I ran. My body moved on instinct, pushing me toward the only place that felt remotely safe, the bathroom. I slammed the door shut and locked it. The knocking continued outside, a slow, measured rhythm. Not just at the front door, not just upstairs, not just the basement. The knocking was on every wall, every surface, the walls, the floors, the ceiling, surrounding me, closing in. I pressed my back against the cold tile, my chest rising and falling in rapid bursts. This wasn't random. They were toying with me. I forced myself to look at the mirror, to see what I already knew was there. Me, or at least something that looked like me. I grinned, slow, stretched too wide, like it had been waiting for this moment. It lifted a hand and pressed it against the glass. My heart stopped. There was no copy this time. It was moving on its own. It leaned in inches from the glass. And then, in my voice, "Why do you keep running?" Couldn't breathe, tilted its head. "You should let me in." A sound crawled up my throat. A dry, strangled noise. No. The bathroom light flickered, and for half a second, the mirror went dark, pitch black, like a hole had been punched into reality itself. And when the light snapped back on, the reflection was gone. I was staring at myself again. No grin, no movement, no thing standing in my place, like it had never been there at all. I sucked in a sharp breath, my lungs burning. Then the bathroom door handle twisted, slow, deliberate, a long, agonizing pause. Then a knock, soft, gentle, almost patient, like whoever or whatever was on the other side knew I had nowhere left to go. I clutched my phone, praying for another emergency alert, another warning, anything, but there was nothing, just silence. And then a whisper, right at the door, soft, mocking. "You can't stay in there forever." The whisper at the door sent an icy jolt through my veins. "You can't stay in there forever." I felt the walls close in. The bathroom, once a sanctuary of sorts, now felt like a tomb. And the door, it was no longer just a physical barrier. It was the last line between me and whatever waited on the other side. I tried to steady my breath, but the air was thick, suffocating. My hand shook as it clutched my phone, but there was no more help. The emergency alerts were gone. No more warnings, no more safety nets. The rules had changed, had they even existed in the first place? The knocking continued, a slow, rhythmic beat that had once been maddening, but now was almost comforting. It was familiar, it was waiting, and it was getting louder. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to gather what little strength I had left. The reflection in the bathroom mirror was gone, but I knew, I could feel it deep in my gut, that it wasn't over. Whatever it was still here, watching, waiting for me to make the wrong move. You know you can't hide forever, the voice repeated. This time it was closer. It wasn't outside the door. It was inside me. It was everywhere. The air, the walls, the bathroom mirror that I could no longer bring myself to look at. It was all part of it now. The thing that had been mimicking me. The thing that had become me. I stood frozen, trapped. There was no escape, but something in me snapped. No, this wasn't how it ended. This couldn't be how it ended. I couldn't be the next person on its list of hollowed-out victims, its puppets. Couldn't let it win. I raised my shaking hand, reaching for the bathroom door. It was time to face it. To face the thing outside that had been trying to force its way in since the moment the doorbell had first rung. The knocking stopped. A suffocating silence hung over the room. My heart pounded. My hand hovered over the doorknob, as if it had a mind of its own. And then, with one final deep breath, I twisted it. The door opened, but there was nothing there. Nothing except the dark, empty hallway, flickering lights casting long shadows along the walls. My pulse raced, but there was no sound, no knock, no voice. Just the hollow, oppressive quiet. I stepped out, slowly, cautiously. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to slam the door shut, to barricade myself in the bathroom again. But I couldn't. I had to know. I had to see it with my own eyes. The thing that had been haunting me, taunting me, making me question every reality I thought I knew. Where had it gone? The hallway was silent. Too silent. I walked down the hall, my feet barely making a sound on the cold wooden floor. My gaze flicked to the stairs, where someone had been waiting for me earlier. Nothing moved. There was no sign of anyone, not even the reflection in the hallway mirror. I stood at the end of the hallway, staring at the closed door to the basement. The doorbell had come from there too, hadn't it? That sound, the knock, it all originated from the basement. I swallowed hard. The basement. If anything was left, if there was any shred of reality still in this house, it would be there. The air around me was thick, like something heavy and dark was pressing down on me. I could feel it the same way I had felt it before. The thing, whatever it was still lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce. I took one step toward the basement door and then the doorbell rang again. But this time it was different. It was sharp, more desperate, as if it were begging me, screaming for me to come back. I froze. The sound of the bell was louder now, echoing in my skull. Every muscle in my body tensed. Every inch of my skin screamed to run, to hide, but I couldn't. I had to face it. It was the only way out. I grabbed the basement door handle and turned it. The door creaked open, and then, for the first time since this nightmare began, I heard a voice that wasn't mine, a voice that wasn't human. I told you, you'd come back. I slammed the door shut, but it was too late. The voice was already inside, already in my head. I turned and ran. I ran past the door, past the bathroom, past the hallway mirror. I ran past everything I thought I knew and into the dark void that had become my world. I ran, but I couldn't escape, because I knew it now. It wasn't just the doorbell. It was never about the doorbell. It was about me, and it always would be. I could hear the ringing in my ears, the knocking from every direction. It wasn't over. It would never be over. The creatures, whatever they were, had claimed me, and as I stumbled toward the door, toward the outside world, I heard the final words, the whisper that echoed in my mind, fading into nothingness. You shouldn't have opened the door.